Civil rights icon, the Reverend Jesse Jackson, whose towering presence and vision reshaped the Democratic Party and the country, has died at the age of 84. His family put this statement on Instagram. Our father was a servant leader, not only to our family, but to the oppressed, the voiceless, and the overlooked around the world. We ask you to honor his memory by continuing the fight for the values he lived by. CNN's Abby Phillip has a look at Jesse Jackson's life and legacy.
When I heard that Jesse Jackson had died at the age of 84, I felt like a chapter of American history had to give up on what he believed America could be. He said Jackson worked to redeem the soul of our nation. That phrase stood out to me. Redeem. As if America, flawed and fractured, was always capable of being better. If only someone was willing to push it there. Then there was Barack Obama, who described Jackson as a true giant. And when Obama says something like that, you can feel the weight behind it. Obama acknowledged something many people sometimes forget. Jackson's presidential campaigns in 1984 and 1988 laid the groundwork for his own historic run. Before Obama became the first black president, Jesse Jackson had already dared to imagine it. He dared to campaign nationally. He dared to build coalitions across race and class. He dared to insist that America's highest office was not off-limits. And that matters. Because when we look at Jackson's life, we don't just see speeches. We see strategy. We see organization. We see someone who understood that change doesn't just happen in the streets. It also happens in voter registration drives, in negotiations, in policy rooms, and yes, in presidential primaries. Bill Clinton reflected on more than 5 decades of friendship with Jackson. He talked about dignity, how Jackson championed it. And I think dignity is one of the most powerful words associated with him. He didn't just fight segregation, he fought invisibility. He made marginalized communities feel seen, heard, founded. Jackson's campaigns weren't just about winning elections. They were about expanding who felt they belonged in American democracy. Black Americans, Latino Americans, Asian Americans, working-class white Americans, he spoke to all of them.
It's hard to imagine how we could have come as far as we have without the creative power, the keen intellect, the loving heart, and the relentless passion of Jesse Louis Jackson.
He built what became known as the Rainbow Coalition, a vision of unity across lines that traditionally divided people. And then there was Kamala Harris, who remembered being a young law student with a Jesse Jackson for President sticker on her car. I love that image. A future vice president driving across the Bay Bridge, strangers honking in support because of a sticker. It shows how movements plant seeds. Jackson's campaign wasn't just a political run, it was inspiration. It told a generation of young people of color that their ambitions were valid. Veteran civil rights leader Al Sharpton called Jackson a consequential and transformative leader. The two of them were connected by history, by the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. in 1968, after which Jackson emerged as one of the figures determined to carry forward the dream. That continuity is powerful. The civil rights movement didn't end with King. It evolved. And Jackson was one of the key architects of its next chapter. Senator Bernie Sanders described him as one of the most transformative political leaders in modern American history. Sanders emphasized Jackson's courage, his willingness to put his life on the line fighting segregation, not just in the South but in the North as well. That's important, because racism in America has never been confined to one region. Jackson understood that injustice could wear different accents and different suits.
In Watts, we have shifted from burn, baby, burn to learn, baby, learn.
And he expanded his own global reach too, helping to free U.S. Lieutenant Robert Goodman, who was held by Syria after being shot down, and later other Americans held in Cuba and Serbia.
I learned how to negotiate as an African American growing up among white people. You have to negotiate every day.
The Reverend set his sights on the White House in 1984.
Milking cows in Iowa, they're coming back to the inner cities. So I learned a lot during that period.
First thought of as a marginal candidate, Jackson finished third in the primary race with 18% of the vote.
But it was still injustice. And then there was something I found fascinating. Even Donald Trump offered tribute. Trump called him a good man and a friend, noting that he had provided office space in New York for Jackson's Rainbow Push coalition. Now, Trump's statement quickly turned political, criticizing opponents and referencing his own record. But the fact that he acknowledged Jackson at all says something. Jesse Jackson was not easily boxed into partisan lines. He navigated power. He negotiated with presidents from both parties. He understood that if you wanted results, you had to talk to everyone.
I am somebody. I am somebody.
From the Jim Crow South, through the turbulent 60s, and into the Black Lives Matter movement, Jesse Jackson was a constant, unyielding
That
voice
to me is
for
one of the most
justice.
underrated aspects of Jackson's legacy. He was a negotiator. He entered tense rooms and left with deals. He advocated for hostages abroad. He intervened in labor disputes. He worked behind the scenes as much as he spoke at podiums. He wasn't just symbolic, he was practical. Another voice that stood out was Raphael Warnock, who called Jackson one of America's great moral voices. Warnock spoke about Jackson's eloquence and rhythmic rhetoric. If you've ever listened to Jackson preach, you know what he means. His words had cadence. They had music. He could turn a phrase into a rallying cry. He didn't just argue, he inspired. Anne Bernice King, daughter of Martin Luther King Jr., described him as someone who pushed hope into weary places. That line hit me. Because that's what leaders of movements often do. They carry hope when others are tired. They remind people that even when progress stalls, the dream isn't dead. When I look at all these tributes, from Biden to Obama, from Clinton to Harris, from Sanders to Sharpton, even from Trump, I see something rare in today's political climate: consensus on character, agreement on impact, recognition that Jesse Jackson changed the country. But here's what I keep thinking about. Jackson didn't just react to history. He shaped it. When he ran for president in 1984 and 1988, it wasn't considered viable by many pundits. Yet he won millions of votes. He registered millions of new voters. He pushed the Democratic Party to broaden its platform. He demanded that economic justice be central to civil rights. He reframed conversations about poverty, war, and global human rights. And he did it decades before social media amplified every message. He did it when organizing meant phone banks, church basements, and handwritten lists. There's also something deeply spiritual about his framing of equality. Many tributes referenced his belief that all people are created equal in the image of God. That theological grounding gave his activism moral weight. He wasn't just arguing policy, he was arguing principle. Now that he's gone, I find myself asking, what does his legacy require of us? Is it coalition building in an era of polarization? Is it moral clarity in an era of cynicism? Is it the courage to run even when victory seems unlikely? Maybe it's all of it. The story of Jesse Jackson is not just about the past. It's about possibility. It's about how one person's insistence on dignity can ripple outward, into campaigns, into courtrooms, into communities, into future presidencies. When Obama says, "We stood on his shoulders," that's not just poetic. It's literal political history. Without Jackson expanding the electorate and normalizing the idea of a black presidential candidate, the path would have been steeper. When Biden speaks of redeeming the soul of the nation, he echoes a language Jackson used for decades. When Harris remembers that campaign sticker, she's remembering the spark of representation. Even critics and political rivals had to acknowledge his reach. So as tributes continue to flow, I don't just see mourning. I see acknowledgement of influence, of impact, of endurance. 84 years. More than 6 decades in public life. Marches, press, sermons, campaigns, negotiations, controversies, victories, setbacks. And through it all, a relentless belief that America could be pushed closer to its own ideals. For me, that's what stands out most. Not perfection. Not partisanship. But persistence. Jesse Jackson believed that progress was not automatic. It required vigilance. It required sacrifice. It required voice. And judging by the chorus of leaders, from Joe Biden to Donald Trump, his voice will echo long after his passing. Maybe that's what makes someone a patriot. Not blind loyalty, but stubborn love. The kind that refuses to give up on a country, even when the country struggles to live up to itself. And in that sense, whether you agreed with him politically or not, Jesse Jackson's life forces a question. Are we still willing to believe in a broader table? A bigger coalition? A more inclusive democracy? Because that was his dream. And now it's ours to carry.
Chicago, but back to Chuck's point, some of the most iconic political images of the 20th century will be Jesse Jackson on a farm in Iowa, on a tractor, surrounded by hundreds of white farmers who were caught up in the farming crisis of 1980. Jesse Jackson was their voice, and that is something that truly was iconic at the time.